Hi everyone. Obscure Script 1 of the main goals of this channel is to explore hidden scripts narratives and developments that could perfectly integrate into the movies and series we love. From now on, I'll be sharing some of these ideas and theories here. I'm sharing this story because I've always struggled with how Tim's romantic life was handled early on in the series. After years of a heartbreaking marriage to a woman struggling with addiction, someone who repeatedly chose drugs over him, and eventually abandoned their home, Tim Bradford wasn't just a grumpy bachelor. He was a deeply wounded man, emotionally exhausted, and an incredibly vulnerable target. To see Lucy and Rachel turn his emotional well-being into a bet just to win a workplace perk always felt selfish and insensitive to me. My goal with this fanfic is to give Tim what he truly deserved, a connection that isn't the byproduct of a game or a training milestone. I wanted to give him a first time in this new chapter of his life, with someone who truly sees him, someone who cares about the man behind the uniform, rather than using him to prove a point or win a wager. This story is about dignity, healing, and a connection built on genuine care. I hope you can feel the difference along with him. It's Valentine's Day, and Tim is not doing well at all. Nell stepped out of the call center room, but slowed her pace the moment she saw Bradford. Of all the days to cross paths with him in the station hallway, this was the worst. Valentine's Day. It crossed her mind to pretend she'd forgotten something and bolt back into the room, but that wouldn't work with Tim. He'd realize she was running away, and it would only make things more awkward. She had managed to avoid him until now. Just walking past and saying a quick, "Hi," was a better plan. Nell wanted to curse him. Of all the girls in the call center, Bradford had to choose her to help him get better calls. Tim is a cop. He likely noticed the glances she thought were discreet, but now realized weren't discreet enough to escape his radar. So, when he needed help, she had been an easy target. "Just walk past and say hi, Tim. You can do this," she whispered to herself. She walked forward, tried to smile, and searched for the right words, but his gaze in her direction made her forget everything she'd planned. "Tim, isn't today your day off? What are you doing here?" "It was, but I didn't want to stay home, so I came in to sign some reports. What about you?" "My shift just ended. I'm heading to an anti-dating party. Do you want to go?" "I'm not really in a party mood." "Good night then." Nell walked past him, but something inside her screamed, begging her to wait. She stood with her back to him, unable to take the step that would lead her away. "Look, I don't want to be alone here, and I don't want to be alone at my apartment. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but do you want to grab a drink with me? As friends?" Nell's mind processed the question in seconds. Her rational side, which had fought for weeks to forget the gifts, the calls, the requests disguised as flirting, and the anticipation for that first drink until she found out he was married, screamed, "Don't do it. He just needs another favor." But her heart, which always won when it came to Tim Bradford, got the better of her. "I'd love to." She wasn't sure, but a faint smile of relief seemed to cross Tim's face. Nell ignored the impression, focusing on walking beside him. Without realizing it, she found herself staring. There was no denying how handsome he is. Knowing how special it felt to go out with him, even just for a drink between friends, made it impossible to hide her nerves. "What is it?" Bradford asked, when he caught her watching him. "Nothing. It's just that you look different out of uniform," she said, staying as close to the truth as possible. She couldn't tell him she thought he looked beautiful, despite the sadness. When they reached the station parking lot, Tim pointed out his car. Nell got in, and the silence, which used to be comfortable, turned strange. They had never reached this level of intimacy before. "Do you want to stop by your place first, or should we go straight there?" She heard the question, but took a moment to respond, just looking at him until he met her eyes, waiting for an answer. "I want to go to my apartment. I live on Avenue." "I know," Tim replied before she could finish the address. When the question of how he knew surfaced in her mind, he read her thoughts. "I saw it in your file. When?" "The bet. I'm glad you won." "That doesn't matter." His hand tightened on the steering wheel and his expression shifted. He was thinking about something painful. Do you want to talk about it? No, but I want to thank you for the calls, for the extra hours. All in exchange for a drink. She tried to lighten the mood. Which you didn't accept. I still owe you. Nell thought about joking, saying he could repay her tonight, but she decided against it. He wasn't in the mood for jokes. Bradford pulled up in front of her building. I won't be long. No rush. Nell climbed out of the car and headed into the building, determined to be as fast as possible. She reached her apartment and went straight to the shower. The hot water on her skin and the white tea plus musk scent of her shampoo acted as a sedative. Nell didn't want to make a drink between friends weird, but knowing that friend was Tim Bradford made everything feel more intense. As she turned off the shower, the thought of what to wear hit her with a wave of panic. She had to dry her hair and get dressed in record time. This wasn't a date. Nell opted for an olive green dress with a clean silhouette that moved beautifully, featuring a discreet V-neck, the same one she was going to wear to Nolan's party. She dried her hair, pulling it back from her forehead, put on light makeup, and slid on her glasses. Ideally, she'd go without them, but she never got used to contacts and couldn't see a thing without her frames. She took a quick look in the mirror. If she had time, she might have redone her makeup or hair, but she didn't. She grabbed her purse and left. Nell hadn't been as fast as she'd promised. When she reached the building entrance, Tim was standing outside the car. Sorry I took so long, she said, trying not to feel self-conscious under his appraising gaze. Let's go. This time, Tim opened the car door for her, before walking around to the driver's side. Nell laced her fingers together, trying to hide the fact that she was now trembling. I heard you applied for the sergeant position, she said to break the silence. There was a weight to the quiet, the kind of silence that precedes either a disaster or a miracle. I did, but it's competitive. I don't have high expectations. I'm sure you'll get it. You're a great cop. Her voice sounded too optimistic. Nell immediately regretted it. It was now glaringly obvious how much she admired him. From the look he gave her, Tim had noticed more than that. Thanks. Silence again. Once more. That sense of anticipation that Nell couldn't control, and that Bradford had surely noticed, too. When they arrived at the bar, contrary to what they'd said, it didn't stop at just one drink. It turned into dinner. Nell hadn't eaten, and Tim hadn't touched food all day. Sitting across from each other, they ordered. Thanks for being here with me. I ruined your Valentine's Day, Bradford said, suddenly realizing what he'd asked of her. You didn't ruin it. I'm happy to be with you. It didn't take Nell long to finish her pasta. Tim barely touched his steak as he answered her questions. When silence returned to the table, Nell finished her drink, lost in her own thoughts. As dinner ended, the night was drawing to a close. When she looked back at Tim, something in his gaze, the way he was staring at her, sent a shiver down her spine. What? It was her turn to ask. You look beautiful. His eyes travelled over her in a way they never had before, making her blush. I didn't know you were a lightweight when it came to drinks, Tim. Nell didn't accept the compliment. It had been a long time since anyone had told her she was beautiful. At least anyone who was being sincere. She wasn't stupid or blind. She knew the women in Bradford's social circle, and they were all far more stunning than she was. I'm serious, Nell, Tim said, tucking her hair back to make her face and shoulders more visible. Keep your hair like that. Everyone needs to see what I'm seeing right now. They looked at each other in silence. The moment broke when the check arrived. Nell offered to split it. Bradford refused and handed his card to the waiter with a look that brooked no argument. Again, they walked side by side to the car. Nell could tell Tim was feeling better, but something was still weighing on him. Are you going to tell me what happened? She didn't need to be specific. She wanted to know why he had been so desperate not to be alone. My marriage is over. I took the day off to finalize everything. The words hung in the air. Nell understood now. Of all the dates to end a relationship, this was the worst. She didn't say, I'm sorry, or anything of the sort. She knew him well enough to know those words wouldn't make a bit of difference. So, They kept walking, each lost in thought. Tim drove in silence, which Nell respected. He needed space, she wasn't going to crowd him. Just a few yards from her apartment, Bradford pulled the car over to the curb. Nell jumped slightly, thinking the car had broken down, until she saw his eyes. "Nell, I don't want to force a situation that makes you uncomfortable, but will you stay with me tonight?" Nell couldn't answer immediately. They just locked eyes. In those seconds, all common sense flew out the window. She just didn't want the night to end. "I will." Tim looked at Nell for a long time, studying her face until he was certain of her decision. She held his gaze, feeling the adrenaline and expectation build. It felt like a dream, and she was terrified that at any moment, something would happen to end it. But contrary to her fear, the drive to Tim's house was quiet. Nothing went wrong. She entered in silence. There were no words to explain this moment. Tim closed the door and stepped toward her. His lips brushed hers, gently at first. It was their first kiss. From that moment on, it was as if their senses became hypersensitive. Tim breathed in the soft scent of her hair and skin as he kissed her neck. Nell felt the strength of his embrace. Smell, touch, sound, everything was turned up to 10. When they reached the bedroom, Bradford took off her glasses and let her remove his shirt without a hint of embarrassment. But the mood shifted when he slid the strap of her dress down, letting it pool on the floor. Nell lowered her head, shy and insecure. With his thumb, Tim tilted her face up until she met his eyes. "You are beautiful." He kissed her again. Nell felt her heart race with every passing second, every touch. She had never felt more alive. Once Tim fell asleep beside her, Nell didn't know what to do. She didn't know whether to get dressed and leave or wait for him to wake up. Making no sound, she turned toward him and, even without her glasses, tried to watch him, to memorize every detail. After a few minutes, exhaustion took over, and she fell asleep too. It was morning when Nell opened her eyes. Tim was already awake beside her. "What time is it?" she asked, fumbling for her glasses on the nightstand. 5 o'clock. My shift starts in an hour. I was thinking of how to wake you up without being rude. You should have called me. I can't believe I slept that long. With her glasses on, Nell looked at Tim, searching for any sign of regret. But she saw the same Tim as always. She got out of bed, feeling her shyness return in full force. Tim feigned focus on picking out his clothes to give her a bit of privacy, as she grabbed her things and ducked into the bathroom. After a quick shower and having to borrow a towel, Nell emerged wearing yesterday's clothes. It was time to leave, and neither of them knew how to act. "Nell, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything. I know what last night was. I'm an adult, and I know there were no strings attached. There was emotion, Nell. You were the first since Isabel. Being with you showed me that I can start over, that I'm alive." "So friends?" Nell said with a smile, because she felt the same way. She felt alive. Friends. An hour later, they both arrived late at the station. Tim first, Nell minutes later. Each gave a different excuse to their respective departments, and no one even noticed the coincidence. While Bradford was already out on patrol with Lucy, a call came through. "All units, 211 inches progress. Location, 1245, Wilshire Boulevard, at the pharmacy. Suspects, 2 males, wearing dark hoodies, one armed with a silver handgun. Last seen exiting through the rear toward the alley." Tim recognized Nell's voice and grabbed the radio, a flash of the night before crossing his mind. 7 Adam 19, copy. We're 2 blocks away. Show us code 3, ETA, 30 seconds.